right, good morning. Can everybody hear me? Perfect. All right. So my husband moved along. He was doing some airbrushing. I had to kick him out of the garage. So sorry about all that. Did you guys bring questions? Go ahead and start typing them in the thing. I have this set up in my shell shop. It's actually my garage. So it's a little warm, but I have all the shells that I sell. I'll give you guys a quick view of the mayhem. So if there's some specific shells you want to see, I have everything out here, and I can show you that and just figure we'll answer some questions. Okay, so Alicia has some issues measuring the different openings, the D and the oval. Oh, Mary, I should have asked you, how do I bring people onto the screen? Okay. So we'll go over how to measure the different openings. Bonnie asked, when the shells get moved around and they have sand in them, should you rinse them again? I pull mine out and just give them a quick rinse in the pool water a lot of times when I'm doing my pool changes. So yes, it's good to kind of dig them out of the substrate. If they're just slightly buried, you don't want to dig deep and find a crab. But I like to rinse mine out and put them back in I use a large dish that has a shallow rim. So I rinse mine out and put them back in the shell shop. I also do a rotation. I have a big tub of shells, actually like 3 of them. And I will do a shell rotation. So the crabs think they're getting new shells all the time. I'll pull some out, put them in the tub, grab some new shells, give them a rinse in the salt water, put them in the shell shop. And that way they keep going and everybody gets excited over new shells that they actually saw a few months prior. So with the D-shaped openings, all right, so this is a pink Murex. And to measure these, Alicia, jump in if I'm not answering your question. But you want to measure, I actually had this one marked up with the blue points. So you want to put your caliper in there. That's how you measure the oval opening. To find the equivalent round, these are about 40% smaller than a round opening. But you can also go and measure top to bottom, and that will be about the equivalent round opening. Let me grab a D. Now this one's chipped, but ignore that. But the blue dots again are your points to measure the D-shaped opening. You can see that. And another shorthand or way to figure this out, get this measurement in, so putting your caliper there, this one measures 1.45. So to convert that, 1.45 divided by 1.5, that's about the equivalent round opening. So if your crab is wearing a 1.45D, you're going to look for a round opening that's about 0.96, 0.97. So I would just jump up to a 1-inch round opening. Let's see. So Alicia, let me know if that answered your questions on how to measure those. And just to go over that, I marked the blue points in a round opening shell. That's where I measure inside. So all of the shells that I sell, they're inside the opening. There's a difference though. Like Ken, he measures the outside of the opening, and that's how Crab Central Station recommends as well. So this shell is a 1.12, but on the outside of the opening, I'm gonna lock this in. The outside of the opening here, This shell measures 1.4. So it depends on where you're measuring the shell. If it's the outside of the opening here and here, or the inside where the blue dots are, will affect the size shell. So if you're ordering on my shop, if you're ordering a 1.1, you're actually getting what would be elsewhere a larger shell. Okay, let's see. Trisha also rotates shells and rinses them. All right, Alicia Dooley asked, when looking to buy a shell in the next size up, how much bigger should we move up to? For instance, my crab is in a 1.5 inch shell opening. What size should I buy next? I recommend getting like a 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch increment. So if you're in a 1.5, I would recommend getting a 1.6 and a 1.7. Some crabs are going to make a larger jump when they molt. Some want a little more spacious, but the 1/8 to a 1/4, so about 1/8 inch increments up to a 1/4 inch is good. All right, and Baruska asked, do they prefer certain openings? There are some species-specific shells that they have preferences. Purple pinchers typically prefer the round opening. However, you'll have some that pick a D or an oval. It's really best to provide an assortment of shells. I like to stick with the favorite type. So the Pethalotus turbo is my go-to for having enough for all of the crabs. These seem to be their favorites typically. But I do offer some of the, like the Murex. Let me grab this tub real quick. The little moon shells, these are a lot of times what they come in when they're painted. Some crabs do like these. I have some ruggies, the rugosus, in these. I've not had anybody like these. Oh, I'm blanking on the name. Somebody tell me what these are. They're the African turbo. I've not had anybody take these, but I've seen some crabs that will. So if you're going to offer an assortment of different types of shells, I like to recommend that you stick to the preferred favorites. Some Marticus. Thank you, Trisha. A lot of our crabs come in the magpie or pica shell. Once they get other options, a lot of them abandon these and never look back. So if you want to offer some of these, just make sure these are not the primary shells. I like to say the 3 to 5 shell recommendation. Make that the 3 to 5 that they love, and then you can add in the weird, obscure shells that they may or may not take. Let me see. I got some. These, I think I had an Ecuadorian pick one of these. And I should have written down the name. I think this is a Rapana or one of those. Somebody will know this one. Goldmouth turbos, a lot of crabs don't like these, but there are crabs that will wear them. If they don't have a better option, they'll definitely pick this over a broken shell or one that doesn't fit very well. So I like to recommend people get an assortment, but stick with the known favorites. Let me grab the Mexican turbo is another favorite of theirs. These are very lightweight, and a lot of the crabs love these. These are hard to find over an inch in size. I am limited in stock to, I believe I have a handful of 0.9, but I recommend people go to Etsy to see if they have any larger shells available on Etsy. All right. So Alicia Perry said her crab Evie, which I think you adopted from me, didn't you? Is in a 1.25. She got some that are 1.5. That should be fine. You might want to try and find some in between when she comes back from a molt, if that doesn't seem to fit her. or she sticks with the 1.25 and it's a little too snug, she might appreciate something in between the 1.25 and the 1.5. Okay, Shirley said she has large PPs that don't want the large green turbos. You're talking about the Jade turbos, I assume, these? Unfortunately, once they get to be a certain size, there aren't other shells that get this large. All of these shells are a snail species, and they have their own limitations. They just don't get that large. You can find some of the Patholotus turbos that will get quite a bit larger, but once they get out of that, you're kind of limited to these, and they are a little heavy, but the larger crabs can support and tote around a large shell like that. The pink murex, those you'll find in larger sizes, but a lot of crabs, if they don't like the murex shell, they're going to prefer the Jade turbo. So Clover said with the magpie, they're quite heavy. They are for the size opening. Now, another thing that's really deceptive, they have this flared lip. The actual opening, so it looks like a large shell, but the actual opening is very small. So relative for the size opening, they are quite heavy. This one's a lot lighter. It's polished, so it's lost a lot of its bulk. But yeah, they're quite heavy. But a lot of the crabs that are taken from the wild, that's what's available to them. So that's what they come in with. And then when you make better options, they usually move on to something else. Let's see. Maribel said, is there a conversion for your measurements when measuring a shell that is being worn, since you measure from the inside as opposed to the outside of the shell? Yes, there is a way to figure that out. There's a lot of variation. So for example, this shell, it's a banded. The material, the brown surface has been removed. So the outside measurement of this shell is a lot less. I'll put one up that's a natural. So you see the amount of shell wall that will give an outside dimension. Even if these are the same size, this one is going to measure significantly larger because of the shell wall. But what I recommend to people when they struggle to get the inside of the measurement, if you can get the claw and the leg, claw and the leg measurement. Let me see, maybe I have a picture on my phone. But one of the things you can do is just message me and say that my crab is wearing a shell that the outside measurement is here. What should I be looking for an inside measurement? I'm happy to go through my shells and help narrow it down and send photos. The leg and the claw measurement. Hopefully you guys can see this. So the point of the claw to the top of the leg, the area between those green lines, if you can get your caliper on that to measure that. So if this were your crab and you were to hold your caliper there, that'll give you roughly the size round opening that you need. It's measuring that. That's also helpful if they won't tuck in all the way. You kind of have to guess and visualize. So if they're just a jumble of legs and they have that claw, you kind of have to make a guesstimate as to what that measurement would be when they just have a bunch of legs and claws sticking out. Let's see, I have an example photo of that as well. And of course, it's never where you thought it was. So, guess we'll move on from that for right now. Okay, Kathy said, Mary's pinchers love the nutmegs, but they don't come bigger than I have, I think. What would you suggest next? I have some of Mary's captive breds, and they have moved up from the nutmeg shells into the green turbos. So these guys, they're fairly lightweight. They do like these. And the Mexican turbos, so these little guys, this is a 0.5 to 0.53. So this one's a good step up for when they're outgrowing their nutmegs. There are larger nutmegs though. Let me see if I've got those handy real quick. So I have some nutmegs. I'm not sure where I put them now because I went and reorganized everything just for this. But they come in 0.7 to 7.5. So if I don't have that size listed on my store, but if you message me, if that's what you want to try out, I can see what I have that would be larger than what you currently have. Okay, Emma said, new to Hermes, what are these numbers measuring exactly, or is it like a shoe size? All right, when measuring a shell, there's a few ways that they do it. If you are shopping online, like this shell, if you were to find this online, they will usually give the outside dimensions. So if you see a 3.5 to 4 inch shell, that is going to be from this point to the longest point here. So on this diagonal, that's going to be what they're giving you the measurement of. Typically, with a turbo shell, whatever this outside point to point is, the opening is going to be half of that. So if you're buying a shell that's 3.5 inches on the, or let's say 3 inches on the outside, it's going to be 1.5 inch opening is about what you can expect. Now the measuring the opening, that's what we try to measure, because when you measure your crab, it's easier to get the outside of the opening or the inside of the opening to figure out what size to get. With the Murex, it's going to be inside, side to side, and same with the D-shaped opening. And just a heads up, a D shape that's 1 inch is not going to be the same as a 1 inch round opening. Give you an example of that. All right, I pulled both of these from a 1.07 to 1.09 bag. These shells measure the same. And you can see the size difference in the opening. So a crab that will fit in a round opening that's 1 inch will not fit in a D-shaped opening that is 1 inch. You need to do the conversion. You need to take your 1 inch D shape and divide it by 1.5. That will give you the appropriate smaller round opening. And that's only going to be an approximation. You may end up, oh, you know what? I think this one's larger. Oh, yep. So another way to figure that out is to measure from here to here to get your conversion to a round opening. This one is 0.66 top to bottom. And this round opening is 0.66. So when you look at a crab that's wearing this, the amount of space they take up and the way it hollows out inside, that's going to be about what you're looking at for a round opening turbo. And you can go up a little bit from there. Emma, let me know if I answered that question correctly. Thank you, Jessica. So Shirley says she can't find tapestry shells larger than the 1.5. That is probably going to be the upper limit for that species of snail. So once you get to that, you're going to want to switch to the jade turbos. Currently, these are the smallest jade turbos I have. This is a 1.3. And so I just weighed both of these. This is a Pethalotus that weighs 1.4 ounces, and this larger jade turbo weighs 1.8 ounces. So to go from that increase in size, these really aren't that heavy relative for their size opening. But this would be what I would suggest when you can't find Pethalotus shells. I recommend getting the smaller jades. Randy says, I'm having a hard time finding brown turbos over 1.5 and the one she's holding. So you're having a hard time finding larger shells than this over 1.5. I do have this all the way up to 1.9, and a lot of people are curious on how big that shell is. Let me grab one. This is a 1.9 to 1.99. This opening is pretty large. This one on the inside is 1.94. On the outside measurement, this is a 2.28. So this is going to be, I'm just going to angle this down a little bit. This is a very large shell. This is one of the largest I have. This one is 1.97 on the inside. And the outside from here to here, it's 2.45. These are about the size that Jonathan was in his later years. My shop name is Hermit Harbor. And my web address is hermitharbor.com. Now, when you go onto my website, I have a downloadable template. This one goes out with all of my orders. I do this as an order insert, but my template online has all of these little circles that you can cut out and use to measure your shell, and then double check the conversion between how you're measuring and how I measure. So you just take these little circles, leave the dotted line. I leave a little stick to hold on to, and then you would just put that in. Let me see. I have one. Those are all larger. All right, so here's a 1.1 round opening. You just drop it into the opening of your shell. It does not go over the outside of the opening. You want to make sure it's inside. So some people have gone and they lay it over the shell opening. That'll give you the outside dimensions of the shell, but that wouldn't align with how I sell mine. But if you were to message me and say, I put this up here like this, and the outside of my shell opening is 1.1, I can go to a comparable shell and measure it, and I would let you know that shell is probably a high-end 0.80 to 0.89. I don't mind helping people like that at all. Thank you, Evelyn, for the link. All right, Tanya said, what is a nutmeg? Let me grab some of those. These are the nutmeg shells. They are Cancelaria something or other. I have the species name on my website. These are what a lot of the captive bred babies prefer until they get too big for these. But they love these shells. All right. Larissa has taken my template and laminated it, glued it to popsicle sticks. Very handy if you're afraid of getting pinched. That is a great tip. Thank you for that. Somebody, I can't remember her name. She was delighted. She printed these out and took them to beach shops. So when she was on vacation, she didn't look like a crazy crab lady walking around with her caliper. She cut out the template sizes she knew she needed so she could discreetly go through the shell shops and figure out what she wanted to buy. You guys are more than welcome to do that. It's not something I demand that you buy from my store. If this is helpful to you when ordering somewhere else, there are some shells people are looking for I don't have. Somebody messaged me today looking for larger Pethalotus. I recommended checking out Ken's store. And so you're welcome to take my template, measure your shell, but do measure the outside of the opening. That's how Ken sells them. So if you're looking for this size, you would go and find out what completely covers that and let Ken know I need a shell opening that's 1.1 inches. And so, yeah, use those when messaging other sellers to find what you need. Let's see. So Kathy says, I need to message about all the shells you showed sizes. I'm not sure what you mean. Kathy said, are nutmegs considered a D shape? I believe they are. Some people say oval. I believe they're a D because they have more of a D look. This one, the moon, would be considered an oval opening by most, and the murex. But these are also considered a D. So the murex is a pretty clear example of an oval opening. All right. Emma, thank you. You're welcome. Let's see. Valerie, what is the conversion again for a D? It's divide by 1.5. So if you have a D-shaped opening, like the Babylonia here, you would take the measurement and divide by 1.5, and that'll give you roughly the equivalent round opening. And conversely, if you have a round opening, you would multiply by 1.5 to find the conversion for a D opening. All right, Randy said they love the carved Pethalotus, their crabs do. The sizes they need are out of stock and they're getting too big for those. What would I suggest? When you're getting out of that, you really need to be moving into these. If you're shopping just my store, I've had a hard time getting the larger Pethalotus shells in. You might want to reach out to Ken. He sometimes has larger shells. There's some stores on Etsy, but always message the seller and ask them, where on this shell do you measure? And find out where they're measuring their shells and compare where you are to how they are to make sure that you guys are getting matched up on the sizing. All right. So Larissa said on her jades, the crabs like the ones with the stripes polished down. Yes, it does make them a bit lighter. One of the issues with those is it does weaken it. I have had a hard time ordering from my supplier and getting them in not damaged. But yes, if you can get them and your crabs like them, a lot of them do like that. The way they do the banding, where they sand it off, you can kind of see on this one. So it has a band in the center and the band on both sides. But if you look, do you see how much of the shell wall is missing over here and over here on the sides compared to that center band? There's no consistency when these shells come in. So you never know. You might get the thicker shell wall. Those will be more durable, or it might be sanded so thin. One thing you want to watch out for, and let me reach behind the computer. Actually, I think I had them over here. So sometimes when they're doing the banding, they go all the way through. You see this little pinhole there? They will sand all the way through. There will be damage. That happens. When I order my shells in bulk, I go through and inspect them. And one of the things you want to watch out for. So this shell, do you see this area right here? It has a filler in it. So this one's kind of a brown filler, but they still have a little hole here. But they will go and fill these. If you come across a shell that has that, I would discard it and not use it for your crabs. I don't know what these fillers are, and knowing that the crabs are going to be rubbing their bodies on them, keeping shell water. I don't know about leaching, if they go and do shell modifications. On the white shells, here's a pearlized Argyrostoma. This one, it's kind of hard to tell, but that hole goes all the way through, and they use some kind of white filler. So if you have that, I would not use these. Now, with that, you may end up with a shell like this that has the pitting. There's nothing wrong with this. You can give this to your crab. It's just not as pretty, but there's nothing wrong with it. There are some, this big one. So this one is pretty ugly. If you look at it, it's got a lot of little tiny holes, surface imperfections. It's not pretty, but if you're curious if it's still practical or functional and whether those holes go through. So if you look closely at this shell wall, see all the little holes right there? They don't go all the way through. So you can see on the inside, they're only in the surface. But what you can do is take the shell to your mouth, put your mouth tight over it and blow. When you blow into it, if the air is trapped and your cheeks fill up and you're not getting any air out, this shell is sealed. It's okay. It will hold water. So just, it's not coming out. That's a quick, easy way to test. So like this ugly one, just test and see if it holds air when you blow into it. Let's see. So Corinthian said, I wonder if hermit crabs evolved over time not to get much bigger than that because they couldn't find shells any bigger. I believe, I don't know if the evolution, the size that they in ideal conditions could get to is affected, but I do know there's the likelihood that when they get too large for the resources and they can't find a suitable shell, they're more likely to succumb to predation. They can't tuck in. And that could be a death sentence if they're not protected by their shell. Let's see. All right, keep chatting here. Let everyone know we're going to break. Okay, so oh, Kat asked about isopods. I do have isopods. I only charge for shipping. I think you had emailed me yesterday. I did respond. I think if it was you, I just need your address so I can check the overnight shipping rates and weather to make sure that it's safe to ship them. Kathy said first baby's pants were periwinkles, but they are too small now. Yes, those are very, very tiny shells. All right, so to follow up, if anybody has any additional questions, message me on Facebook. That's the easiest way. And it's Evie Spencer on Facebook. Just send me a message through there. I'm happy to help you and get through whatever additional questions you have, or if you need help narrowing down shells. If I don't have it, I'll offer whatever suggestion I can. Let's see. Rebecca asks, anyone else here from Canada? Shipping is so expensive. It is very expensive. And yes, you guys do have very few sellers up there. I don't know offhand the link for Ken's store, but if you search on Etsy for the shell store, you'll find Ken's shells. Larissa asks, can shells be repaired? Valerie is looking into, or not Valerie, oh my gosh, Vivian Van. She is looking into ways to repair them, working on ways to remove paint. If you have a broken opening, there's ways that you can sand those back or just give them to the crabs. Sometimes the jagged openings, they don't really care. They modify them themselves. So, all right, I think we got through everything. But again, just message me on Facebook if you have any more questions. I'm happy to go through my shell shop and show you what I have, exchange photos so we can narrow down what you need, and answer any additional questions. Thank you guys, and enjoy the rest of CrabCon. And I'll hang out for a minute in case anybody wants to send a follow-up question. Oh, Valerie shared that Vivian will take broken and painted shells. Yes, she is. And she's got a team of people volunteering to figure out ways to resolve some of those issues. My full name on Facebook is Evie, Evie Spencer, Spencer. Hey, Jessica. Hey, Suzanne. Just going to get all these shells put away for now. Oh, yes, Jessica, somebody said you had mentioned that you got them from me. So thank you. they are still doing well, thriving in the crab habitat, so I've got some to share. Thank you, Suzanne. I'm happy to help. One thing a lot of people don't know, I don't actually do this for a living. I own a boarding kennel and take care of dogs. I'm a pet groomer, and I got into selling shells mostly to support my rescue. I have 7 tanks. The one is 220 and 230 joined by a 150. It's chock full of crabs. So when I started the Hermit Crab Rescue, it seemed like a good way to use my retail ability to buy wholesale and resale so I could supply my own crabs that come into the rescue. And I found a happy little niche here helping other people figure out shells because it is very frustrating. So I do this in the evenings and during the day as I can. So in addition to the adoption for the hermit crabs and then my regular job, and then we also have a food truck that we do periodically. I do the shell selling. All right, Colleen said she has a purple pincher with a 1 1/4 inch opening. Now, with the 1 1/4, is it from the outside or the inside? Figure that out. I measure on the inside of the opening. If it's the outside, you're gonna find shells in my store that are smaller than that. So if it's 1 1/4 out here, it's probably, we just had a shell like that. It's probably like a 0.9 inch on my store. And so if they're in a 1 1/4 inch and they fit okay, I would go up by an 1/8 inch up to another 1/4 inch. So up to 1 1/2 inch. And isopods. Isopods are the roly-polies. I personally keep the pruinosis powder orange. Some people think they're kind of creepy. This is not a pruinosis, but they look similar to this. This is a lavis. They wander around the crab tank picking up leftover food. So when your crabs kick the food out of their dish, they'll pick some of that up. They will also climb into the food dish and help the crabs eat their food. But they are interesting. They're kind of fun to watch. If you have pet sand periods, there's something to look at while all of your crabs are down. And they do help just tidy up the tank, but they do consume food. So you may have some additional food going to just feeding your isopods. And they will eat some poop. Occasionally, they will go for a swim and drown in the pools. They cannot swim. You'll have to fish them out periodically. So there are some things about them that are a little annoying. But I genuinely appreciate having them. I like them. I do keep other species in their own tanks as a hobby. There are some beautiful species of isopods. They are terrestrial crustaceans. They're cool little critters. I do like having them. And turbo shells, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but a turbo is a round opening. This is a turbo. Round opening turbo shell. When shopping online, you want to watch out. Some sellers will call shells turbos that aren't really ideal and suitable for our crabs. Like this thing, strawberry top. It has a round opening, but these are not ideal for our crabs. This is another one. They would sell this as a turbo. These spiral differently. They go the wrong direction. Oh, wait. I think I got confused on that. But anyways, these, they don't like. I would not buy these. All right. Any suggestions on getting rid of grain mites? You'll want to get predatory mites if you're having a problem. The isopods are going to just live with the mites. They eat the same thing. They just kind of coexist. I will occasionally get mites in my isopod tanks. Usually the best remedy for that is to get rid of the additional food that the grain mites are eating. The isopods will live on just leaf litter, but you can't really do that with your crabs. So if the grain mites are getting too bad, look into predatory mites. Last year's CrabCon, I did a video on pests in the crab habitat, and I had some information on using predatory mites to get rid of the grain mites. There are some other ways that you can manage them by picking up the food more frequently. They will go and flock to the food, just take it out, dump it. But yeah, they're kind of a pain to get rid of, but they aren't really harmful. The grain mites only want the food. So if it's just the creepy factor, like I totally get that, but you don't really need to worry about them with your crabs. And Colleen asked, do I sell isopods? I will share my isopods. I don't charge for them. I just charge for my cost on shipping them. But I do have the Pruinosis powder orange that are in my crab tank. They breed well. So I have plenty to just send off. Okay, so you are a biology teacher, marine biology teacher. That sounds cool. So you're learning with your students. That's cool. I do not sell the predatory bugs, but if you go to last year's CrabCon on that, I believe I shared a link to where other people have gotten them. I think it's Nature's Good Guys. If you look that up, I don't know if Meredith was in here, but she would know. She gave me the link to that. But yeah, with Colleen, I think isopods are awesome. You should look into the Cubaris species. The white ducks are one of my favorites that I have. Oh, Meredith, you're on here. Do you have the link for the predatory mites to handle the grain mite problem? If you could do that, thank you. So yeah, Meredith will give you the link for where you can get the predatory mites that'll eat your grain mites. You're welcome. I'm going to just keep tidying up while you guys are... I think everybody's answered their questions. We still have a few people in here. So if anybody has any questions, just type away. Thank you, Kay. I am really glad you enjoyed it. And if you think of anything else, feel free to message me. Meredith, thank you so much for the Nature's Good Guys. I did remember correctly, but I appreciate you posting that for other people. Some people have asked about the calipers before. Amazon is a great place to get these. I like the digital. They're just simpler to use. And they're not that expensive, around $20-something. And if you ever just want to use a ruler, I like the clear rulers. You can see the opening through there. And then if you need to use a flexible tape measure, don't use the sewing tape. Use the this type. All right. Well, it looks like we're all done. It's lunchtime. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.